There you go. Hello, everyone. Good evening. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to our interview mastery workshop today, organized by the Professional Development Club of University of Ottawa. I'm Saraf Nusrat, the executive of the Career Development Center of uOttawa. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. We have with us Sina Ghazali, the Vice Executive of the Career Development Center of PDC. We have with us our volunteers, Haripriya Parvati, and all of our students. Like many of you may know, throughout these semesters, we have been organizing many events, including the resume workshop, the LinkedIn event, even for the students. So today we are organizing the interview mastery workshop. And as our chief speaker, we have with us Ms. Rachael Plamondon, the Senior Talent Acquisition Specialist of Recollective, who have been working there for past 20 months. We are very glad to have Orvindya Srinivasan, the co-op student and the software developer at Recollective. Orvinda is currently pursuing her master's at the University of Ottawa in the Master in Digital Transformation and Innovation program. Welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us from your busy schedule. We are glad to have you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Saraf.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Rachel, we can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yeah.
Can anybody else not hear me, or?
Can you please unmute yourself?
No, we can hear you.
Okay, I think maybe it's just you, Saraf, unfortunately. Can you hear me now, Saraf, or no?
Let me check.
I'm glad to hear that everybody else can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can.
Well, until I guess hopefully Saraf can hear me soon, but thank you so much everyone for being here. It's a nice kind of smaller group, which is super fun. Hopefully that means we can be a little bit more intimate and kind of have nice chats. You can ask questions throughout. With just for the sake of time, Oro, our co-op student, as Saraf introduced her, is only here until 6:30. So I'm going to let her start by introducing herself, telling us a little bit about her story. While she does work for us now as a co-op student, she has a great journey before joining us. And she's a fellow student of yours at uOttawa. So Aurovindia, please go ahead and I'll let you take over the floor for now, but I will definitely come back and chat with all of you guys afterwards.
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, guys. I'm happy to join you today. I'll just give a quick intro about me and my experience at Recollective so far, and I'll try to keep it relevant to the topic of discussion today. I'm a software developer, and I started my career at the end of 2019, and I decided to pursue a master's degree in data science at uOttawa due to my interests in the data science side of things at work. And I came here as part of the fall 2022 intake. And as part of the university's co-op program, I then applied to different companies via the co-op navigator and other career platforms. And I got the role of a full stack developer at a company called Recollective. That was my first co-op term. And my second and final co-op term is with Recollective. And Rachel here was my recruiter. It's been a fulfilling 3 months at Recollective, and I've got my hands on Recollective AI, large language models, generative AI, and some other interesting and exciting AI side of things, apart from full stack development. So as for the interviews, which is the topic of today, I've sailed the same boat as most of you. I've also been part of the applications no callback repeat cycle. And I sought out for some advice. And the most advice I got was to work on not just my application process and resume, but also the type of job roles I'm applying to. And I always wanted AI focused software development roles, but due to the massive competition, I thought of giving up that idea altogether and apply to all relevant job roles. And the advice I got was to not let go of my interests and stick to the kind of job roles I like, because that not only makes my application process streamlined, but it is also better for my career growth. And one other advice that I resonated with was to remember why I made a career switch. And it is from working a full time job to a master's degree. And that is to get AI and data science focused experiences and to explore the Canadian market. So Ultimately, our experiences are individual and unique to each of us. So I hope I gave some perspective with my experience. And I'm sure Rachel is going to bring forth invaluable insights and knowledge. And I'm eagerly looking forward to her presentation. Unless you guys have any questions uh, or any outstanding doubts, over to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Oro. Awesome. Anybody have any questions for Oro before she has to hop off, or shall I just get started?
Yes, Rachel, you can get started with your presentation.
Awesome. Can you hear me now? You're
sure
good?
I can hear you now. I'm so sorry. I missed in the
okay.
beginning. I'm so sorry. I can hear you now.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Oro. That was awesome to hear about your own experience there. So listen, I have prepared a little presentation that I'm gonna share in a second. And then but because we're kind of a smaller group, don't hesitate if you have questions. I do see the raise hand or you can react. I'm not sure if when I do share my screen, if I'll still be able to see all of that. So somebody just call out if they have a question and I'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, sure. Parvati will be helping you. If anyone has any question over the chat, she
Cool.
can talk. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. So let me get to sharing. So I will share this screen. I guess let me know what you're seeing. I'm sure you're seeing kind of the Teams
I can
call.
see my face.
You're seeing your face. Lovely. All right. Let me share the other screen. That'll be easier. Classic. I see. Here we go. Okay. Now you should be seeing just my basic screen. There should be nothing on it. Is that right? Yeah, hopefully you're seeing that. So if I share this, what do you see? Do you see my actual presentation or my presentation with the notes?
Your actual presentation.
Lovely. Okay, so I did it. I'm so glad. So that's the end of the presentation. I'm just kidding. So as long as you're seeing the actual presentation and not my notes, and please do let me know if ever it's the opposite. But again, super happy to be here, and I'm really glad I was invited. To be chatting with you all on a Friday evening. I know that, for all of you, I'm sure you've had a busy schedule, and I just really appreciate you being here on a Friday evening, and agreeing to, wanting to spend time with me for the next hour and a half or 2 hours or so. So again, thank you so much. And hopefully, you took something from Oro's intro. She's had a great career and school experience. At any time, you can always reach out to her. She's always happy to tell you a little bit about us or just her experience. So, I mean, to kick things off, I assume you're all here tonight to, hear my advice, my tips, my tricks, my kind of secret recipe to getting a job, right? I'm sorry to say I don't have, some sort of secret recipe. Unfortunately, I wish there was one, great way to get a job, and that it was, one path you could take and it would be successful every time. But it's really not like that. But I am happy to share, what I have learned over the course of my career and give you hopefully a few key takeaways that will help you on your own journey. Applying for jobs and interviewing, it's really not easy. It's hard. It takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of time. But I think the reward of getting a job and setting yourself up for success is so worth it. So I'm going to dive in while, this presentation is not about me. I do think it's important to tell you a little bit about me. I chuckled a little bit while making this slide. But I do want to introduce myself, of course. I don't want to make it seem like it's all about me, but I think sharing my own journey, I had quite a journey through school myself, and perhaps you can connect to some of the things that I share today. Like anyone else, when I was younger, I kind of wasn't fully aware of what it was like to actually be out in the world trying to find a job. Or, when I was in high school, I kind of had an idea as to how I thought my career would go. And I thought it would kind of go like this. You start somewhere at the bottom, and you make your way nicely along this straight path, and you go up, and you kind of don't stop. You just keep going up from there, and ultimately you get kind of to the top. I thought, great, I'm going to get into this amazing university. I'm going to ace every single class that I take, and I'm going to graduate with honors. I thought, I'm going to apply to jobs. I'm going to get interviews. and I'm going to have lots of offers, and I'm going to get an amazing job, and I'm going to start with a really high salary. I'm going to get promoted. I'm going to get an even higher salary. And then I'm, ultimately top of my career, and I'm going to make lots of money. I'm going to be rich. It didn't necessarily go like that. But I think that, just the idea that we all have this perception of how things are going to be, and that it's going to be this straight line, while maybe this worked for some people, it didn't necessarily go like that for me. My journey went something like that, where it was a little bit more wonky, some ups, some downs. I definitely had my high points, but also my low points. So, just to kind of start back from the beginning again, my name is Rachel. I am from a small town near Sherbrooke, Quebec, so I do speak both English and French. It was great when I was growing up. I thought I always wanted to be a teacher when I was going through high school. I thought that would be a really great profession. And as I was kind of going through high school, that shifted a little bit, as I wanted to keep my doors open, I guess you could say. So I thought, let's say, I'm going to be a doctor. That's what I'm going to do. And to make it even more specific, I'm going to be a pediatrician. I'm not really sure where that came from, but that's what I thought I was going to do. So I graduated high school, and I started college in health sciences. So in Quebec, we have college in between high school and university. It's a 2-year program, and it kind of prepares you, or gives you some more courses in between high school and university, because we only have up to grade 11 in Quebec. So I started college doing health sciences, so taking the physics, the chemistries, the biologies, all of those good things, and I kind of didn't love it. I didn't do very well, and I didn't really ultimately like the classes. I wasn't a huge fan of physics. Calculus was definitely not my favorite. Chemistry, again, not my favorite, but I really liked biology, and I liked that side of things. So I ultimately switched programs. I then went into psychology. So I'm not even in university yet, and I've already kind of had like a crisis. And so it's very normal. And I thought, okay, great. Now I'm doing well. I like what I'm studying. So I graduated college, and then I started in university in psychology. And I thought, great, you know what? My plan is made now. I'm going to be a psychologist. It's kind of the best of both worlds. I'm still kind of pulling from a bit of my sciencey background. And so that's what I kind of sought out to do. I got 3 years in, and I decided, I don't really think psychology is for me. What I didn't do is I did not quit or anything. I actually did finish my psychology degree, but I ended up staying at the university for 2 extra years on top of all the schooling I'd already done. And I completed a bachelor's of business administration in HR. I'm obviously not a teacher. I'm obviously not a doctor or a psychologist. And HR was something that I really felt that I kind of connected with. And so I'm really glad I did that. And I'm glad I kind of went through those ups and downs. So here we are, I'm done school, and I'm kind of out, I guess, in the workforce. I'm starting to apply to jobs, and I didn't get an interview. I didn't get any interviews. And I'm like, I studied HR. I studied how to do this. How am I not getting interviews? These things happen. It's normal. Like I said, it's hard to apply to jobs. It's hard to get interviews. And then when you're even getting interviews, then how do you get an offer? So the way that I actually did end up getting into, because I'm obviously working now, so something worked out for me. I through a friend, I got an interview. She ultimately got contacted by somebody, and didn't want that role, and thought, I think I know somebody who might. So she referred me in, and I got my first job. So yay, I did it. But I think ultimately the moral of the story is that, things are going to be wonky. They're going to be ups and downs. It's not going to be this perfectly straight career path. And you guys are all, for the most part, I'm sure, doing some sort of graduate program. And you may have, experienced some of this before, or you may be feeling a little bit like this now, like you're in school and you're not really sure what you want to do. It's all for a reason, and it is all going to work out at the end of the day. But I think there are a few tips and tricks ultimately that I can share, kind of as I went through this myself. And ultimately I would kind of see that I'm doing okay now, which is great. So off to kind of what am I actually doing now? I'm a senior talent acquisition specialist. So I didn't start as a senior talent acquisition specialist. I've been in recruiting now for 5 years, and I work at a company, as you've all heard, at Recollective. And so ultimately, I started as a talent coordinator, so kind of the most basic entry level position you can get when it comes to recruiting or HR in general. And that was where I should and needed to start. So that was great. It kind of got me a break. I started that actually at a company called Smart and Bigger. So you should see the logo appear on the screen now, which is a law firm. So really different ultimately from what I'm doing now. I loved my time at Smart and Bigger. I was able to grow and learn there. It's a totally different company culture and kind of experience than what I'm doing now. But if I hadn't started there and gotten my experience, I wouldn't be at a place like Recollective now, which Recollective is much more aligned with kind of what company culture I want to be a part of. At the time, a law firm sounded really cool. It's kind of like what you see in the movies or on the TV show, Suits. It was kind of like that. But ultimately, it gave me a lot of opportunities, but not necessarily what I wanted to do forever. So I'm really glad that I'm now have grown up, into a senior talent acquisition specialist, which is really just kind of, again, a fancy way of saying recruiting. And so I'll tell you just super briefly what Recollective is, what we do, and then I'll get into kind of the good stuff is probably what you're wanting to hear about, but some tips and tricks on actually getting a job. The beauty about Recollective is it's based here in Ottawa, and I'm also based and living in Ottawa. Luckily, we do have a very flexible work policy, so I am, of course, joining from the comfort of my own home, which allows me to spend lots of time with. I don't know if you can see right now, but on my wall, I have behind me or to the side of me a picture of my lovely puppy and my daughter as well. So it allows me lots of time to spend with them. It's not a big company, so it's about 100 employees. Where I was working before at Smart and Bigger, it was about 400 to 500 employees. So again, very different. But ultimately, what Recollective does is we focus, I guess, on building the future of research technology. So we're a qualitative research platform. So we help companies perform research through our platform, I guess, to say it really basically. Those pictures that you see on the screen are pictures of our lovely office. We do have a great office that we can go to if we want to. There's no, you have to go every day or anything like that. It just a lot of flexibility there. So what I would like to do is show you a little video. It's about a minute and a half or 2 minutes on kind of what we do. Just one, you can stop hearing me speak for 2 minutes, and you can, there's a bit of music with it, so hopefully it'll give you at least a little taste of what we do. And like I said, then after that, I'll get into actually telling you more about interviews and whatnot. So I'm going to hit play. If you can't hear it, the sound, yell at me, but hopefully the sound works. Okay, so let's prep your sound level to make sure it doesn't blast in your ears too. So you should be hearing it now.
I'm not hearing it.
Oh, that's so annoying. Okay. It's so interesting. I guess they never asked me if I wanted to share my sound when I shared Teams. Is anybody really good with Teams and knows how I'm supposed to share so that you can hear my sound? I'm getting a really flat no answer. Maybe we'll.
Are you in any headphone?
Am I wearing headphones? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you.
Oh, you're saying if I disconnected and then
Yeah. Disconnect your headphone. Probably it will work. Yeah, we can check this.
Okay, let's see. Thank you.
Arvind is saying you to share the tab, not the window.
To share the tabs and not the window. Oh, yeah. Let me see. Okay. Listen, learning. Share a tab, a Chrome. Okay, so see, it's because it's my PowerPoint. Let's try this. We'll try it just to see if this works.
Sure.
Are you hearing anything?
No,
okay.
We can't hear you.
Okay. Well, listen, we'll skip over it. I don't want to make this kind of stop the whole presentation. It was a 2-minute video, honestly. Are you seeing though the correct screen or what are you seeing?
We can see the screen where it says what makes you happy.
Okay, lovely. Okay. All right. Well, in order to kind of keep going, keep rolling through this, sorry about that. Maybe I can send it to you guys afterwards if you want to watch it on your own time.
Yeah, sure. Please do. Sure.
Yeah.
You
So
can also, is this a
yeah,
YouTube link? You can also
it
share the
is.
YouTube link on the chat so
Yeah,
that
maybe
people
I'll
can
do that
see.
at the end so that you guys can
Of
watch it.
course. Of
Okay.
course. Thank
Sorry
you.
about that. Classic. Sometimes, it's going to be part of the presentation later, but when we rely too much on technology, sometimes things don't always work, and you just got to roll with it. To talk about our recruitment process, though, it, I'll go through each of these. I'm not going to speak for hours and hours, although I could, on all of these things. There's like a never-ending amount of tips and tricks and good things to say about all of these things. But ultimately, I'll say a few things about our process, and this is very similar in a lot of different companies, kind of how they go about finding the best candidates. We all do at some point collect some sort of resumes, application of some sort. We screen candidates, we interview candidates. A lot of companies do reference checks, and then of course at some point, ideally, the point is you get an offer. So I'll go through this. I'm going to start with the resume section. I'm not going to talk a lot about this. I know that you've had some presentations, or maybe you've attended events in the past on the resume, but I'm going to talk a little bit about my own experience, the things that I look for as a recruiter. And again, if you asked 10 different recruiters to give the same presentation or give their opinions, we would probably all say 10 different things. We're human. That's the beauty of it. I know a lot of people these days think we're all robots, or that your resumes were being reviewed by a robot. It's not true. We do, have AI in our process, but it's not. It is ultimately a human who's reviewing your application, which I think is a good thing. So here are my few tips. I think keeping it simple, concise, and relevant are the basic takeaways of this particular slide. I did pull this particular, I guess, resume template. It's a fake person, John Doe. There are a few things I like about this. It's all on one page. Listen, if you have more experience that doesn't fit on a page, I wouldn't stress that. Don't worry about it. But ultimately, if you can make your resume concise, this is your first opportunity to have the recruiters see something interesting about you. The goal is not to tell your entire life story in a resume. You're trying to keep it as brief and kind of as appealing as possible. I probably spend about 2 to 5 seconds on each resume when I'm reviewing them. So it's not a lot of time. I will, of course, go back and review if something seems interesting, and I'll spend more time on it. But it's really quick. So if you have half of your resume as something that's not relevant to the role, I'm going to pass over it. I'm going to talk quickly about the sections that I think are useful to have on a resume, and things that maybe are not as useful. So let's start with and it's going to come up as a little box in gray. You'll see that little part at the top. It's kind of like a professional summary. Some people call it different things. This is fine. I don't, if somebody doesn't have it, I don't go, oh my gosh, it's a bad resume. If you're going to put it in, make sure it's relevant, make sure that it's short, concise. The biggest thing here, let's say, and I'm going to use this probably as an example throughout the whole thing. Let's say you're applying to a marketing job. And it requires you to have 5 years of experience. I want to see in this 5 years of relevant marketing experience. I don't want to see that you're a coach on the side. That's amazing stuff that we can cover off in an interview, but keep this really relevant to the role. Then you'll see I've put a square over the contact info. I don't think I have to tell you guys, but it's really important, obviously, to put in your email. How am I supposed to reach you? You don't have to put your whole address on there, but if you give me, like in this case, New York, US, that's great. If you want to put your address on there, typically that's helpful, but you don't have to. Put your LinkedIn, and I will say, if you don't have a LinkedIn, you should create one if you want to be, especially for tech or SaaS companies like the company I'm in. Having a LinkedIn, I look at everybody's LinkedIn. And I'm not the only recruiter that does this. So if you don't have a LinkedIn, create one. If you have one and haven't looked at it in 5 years, then make sure that you're updating it. I see a question. Hold on. Can we keep more words in the resume as it mathematically increases our chances of getting? I love this question. Okay. As it mathematically increases chances of getting our resume passed through an ATS. So like I said, it is most of the time a human actually reviewing your resume. It's not like some sort of robot. Some companies potentially have AI to pull out certain keywords, but most companies have a recruiter like me, like a me person. I'm not, somebody who's going to mathematically look at what words you have. So I want you to be you. I want you to be real. So I wouldn't do that. Don't make it longer just for the sake of trying to kind of beat the system. But it's a great question, and I think it's a really common misconception these days. Languages, if you have languages, put them in there. This person separates it because they have 3. If you have other languages, put them in. That's super important, and I think it's really great. Work experience, that's an obvious section that you should put into your resume. Keep it at the top. If you're somebody who, let's say, is fresh out of school, you maybe don't have a ton of experience, I would still put in what you have for experience, but it shouldn't be hidden at the bottom. Don't shy away from not having a ton of experience. Put it what you have at the top, and let it shine for what it is. Your education, yes, it's an important section. Please include it on your resume. The one thing I'll say here is that, let's say a position is asking you for a specific, degree or a specific certification or something. Let's say they want you to have a PhD in electrical engineering. You can highlight that and maybe put that at the top of your resume as opposed to your work experience. Otherwise, I would leave it like this, the way it is. Skills. Sorry, I see a question come in. Should you put that you are okay with relocation in resume? If yes, which section is most preferable? I would, if you're okay with relocation, sure, you can put it in your application or in your resume. I'd probably put it where your address is or where your location is. Yeah, so you can put that in. For the skills section, sorry, so there are some skills in this particular resume that I think are relevant, but there are so many that it's filler. Don't crowd your resume with just filler and fluff. We'll see right through it. If you're applying again for a marketing job or something like a sales job like this, SEO is a very particular skill set that you can get. That's important to put on there. Public speaking, I wouldn't put that on there. Negotiation, I wouldn't put that on there. Teamwork, like, I'm sorry, but most of us can work in teams. That's not something that you have to put on there to highlight your skills. I see a question come in, but 2 seconds. Google Analytics, that's a good one. That's something specific that maybe you've gone ahead and gotten the skill set for. Social media advertising, that's a good skill. But decision making, you don't need to necessarily put your soft skills on there. Okay, question. Can we write summary of qualification section where we will write the important top bullet points from our resume? Oh, adding to this question is summary of qualification section absolutely important and mandatory. No, I think you mean like more of like a paragraph style thing. Again, feel free to like talk and if you want to unmute yourself and clarify.
I think they meant the first para that you have mentioned, the summary of qualifications, right after John Doe.
Oh yeah, the professional summary.
So is it absolutely necessary, mandatory
No,
to have it?
it's not. If I'm just saying, if you want to write one, like I don't have one on my resume. If you want to write one, just make sure it's really concise and relevant. If not, I would take it out. It's just crowding your resume ultimately, in my opinion. In my opinion.
Rachel, I want to add something.
Yeah.
I want to add something. So people actually add their soft skills like public speaking or something like that because sometimes they think that probably an ATS software would match that with the job description. So what do you suggest? Should we include that or we shouldn't? Like, as you said, I know, as you said, like lots of companies don't use the ATS software.
Yeah. I guess like I've never been in a company that uses that particular software. So I don't personally have experience with that. It depends. I mean, I guess if you're applying to a lot of different places that potentially have that, I guess it's like, how do you know if they have that or not? And if I don't know, I would probably go with being showcasing my actual skills as opposed to filling it with all these things because you're trying to kind of, like I said, beat the system in a way. It's not to say that you don't have those skills. but for all the recruiters that I know in my network, we don't use, it's not like a robot reviewing your resume. Typically what I've seen is you maybe don't submit your resume, you answer a bunch of screening questions. So, and that the AI or something will take that and review. But in that case, you're answering questions. So those you're going to be as honest as possible through. It's not necessarily like there's always going to be a recruiter reviewing your resume at some point. It's tough though. I understand. It's a good question. Okay, now for these other sections like organizations, honors and awards, conferences and courses. Listen, if you've got things that are relevant to that, feel free to put them in. But if you don't, I don't want you to feel like you have to list that you volunteered for, your sister's soccer club when you were 5 or 6 years old. Like, don't fill it with stuff that isn't relevant to whatever role you're applying to. A recruiter would much rather see super concise, short resume than something super long. So those are kind of, I do think this is a nicely structured, it's quite visually appealing, this resume. You don't need to become a web designer and make it so that it's full of colors and flowery, unless you're applying maybe to be a web designer. The only thing I don't love about this resume is that the colors that they chose is red. Typically we associate red with like X's or errors on like an exam or something. So I would typically go with like blues or like I guess like the purple even on the background of this particular slide is not bad. That would be the only thing. Otherwise, I'd think, hey, I'm going to take a look at this resume. Cover letters, yes or no? Again, I am saying that this is my opinion. I'm not a fan of cover letters. I think unless a job is specifically requiring you to write a cover letter, we have probably all sat down at some point in our life and tried for the life of us to write a cover letter. And we've all probably used a thesaurus, synonyms to describe ourselves in this beautifully eloquent way. And all this, we're just saying the same thing over and over in 3 different paragraphs. Unless you have a really good reason to want to write a cover letter, I wouldn't include one. Honestly, I just skip over them anyways when I'm reviewing. Again, unless you're a great writer or you're applying to a role maybe that needs you to demonstrate writing skills. I just wouldn't waste your time. Focus on other things. Should I put a picture of myself on a resume? Ultimately, it's not needed. The beauty with LinkedIn is that's kind of maybe where we get a little bit more of that, pictures and colors and whatnot. I just don't want you to waste space with a big picture of yourself. Some recruiters really, really dislike it. So I don't decline somebody because they have a picture, but it's just not typical to put a picture on a resume. And last thing, should I customize my resume to each company and each role? Ultimately, your skills don't change. Who you are is the same. And ultimately, I would assume that, let's say you're in marketing, you're probably applying to marketing roles. You're probably not, applying to be a plumber and then, a recruiter and then, a software engineer. So you don't need to have 12 different resumes. It's good to keep it, consistent to who you are, and that'll stand out. I guess any questions before I switch to the next slide?
Rachel, we have one question on the chat.
Oh, yeah. Does a recruiter really visit the candidate LinkedIn after reviewing the resume? I do. Almost every single candidate, I look at their LinkedIn. And if you don't have one, I'm not going to say you're an awful person and I'm not going to consider you. But yes, I do look at your LinkedIn. So if what you have on your resume is different from what you have on your LinkedIn, I'm going to notice, and a recruiter's going to notice. I love LinkedIn, and especially if you're applying to a tech or a SaaS company or like in the tech industry, we are very big on LinkedIn.
I think we have a question from Farnaz. Farnaz, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, and thanks for your presentation. My question is that I'm working full-time job, something related to my expertise because I just graduated last May. Thanks. But the thing is that I'm looking for another job that or would be more related to my expertise, something else. But
Yep.
I want to make sure that, is it nice to add my current job in my resume, because it's almost 6 months that I've been there. I'm not sure about it, that it will be good, because I know that many companies think that, okay, it's less than a year and maybe I'm not a reliable person or something like that. It's always
I know
worry
what you
about
mean.
that.
Yeah, it's so hard. The business of recruiting is literally judging like every day, every second, right? And of course, we do it without bias, or we try our best to do it without bias. But it's a really good question. So here are the pros and cons. And my answer is yes, you should include it. 6 months is 6 months of you gaining experience, whether it's only 6 months or not. I think what would be worse is if you put nothing and the recruiter goes, what were they doing for 6 months?
Yeah.
And it ultimately work gaps happen. It's not a big deal. And just upon work gaps, just while we're on the topic, I would say that if you have a work gap, it's so much easier to just address it. You can say, listen, I was off for X reason, or yes, I acknowledge I have a work gap here, but I, was studying on the side, or I was doing professional development here or there. So it's not a big deal, but no, I would definitely put that on there for sure. I would put it on your resume.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Another
we have
question
another.
from Monica.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Rachel. First of all, thank you for your time on this Friday evening.
Sure,
And
absolutely happy to.
great presentation. So my question was, taking back on what you said, that you do visit the LinkedIn profile and you do see what the experiences they have on their LinkedIn profile. Does it match with what they have on the resume? So for jobs that we want to apply for, so somewhat like we always try to customize the resume, that we do not list all the experiences we have in our
Sure.
life on resume, right? So
Yep.
if a recruiter, like, is it, do you like see it as a, like, from a recruiter perspective, is it a red flag if I don't list all of the jobs, or just only the ones relevant ones, or is it something that you do expect?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I'm going to say that probably to every single one of your questions, but they're really good questions. Ultimately, what I mean by if it doesn't match, so I've received applications from people where literally the dates don't match. So they'll say they've worked somewhere from let's say 2014 to 2020, but then I go to their LinkedIn and actually it says 2014 to 2019. That's where the flag comes in, because why are you fibbing information? I will tell you, I worked in a grocery store for 5 years. Am I ever going to put that on my, resume? When I was 17, that I worked in a grocery store for 5 years. No. Is it on my LinkedIn? Yes, because I try to be complete. So if you take things off of your resume that maybe is experience that you've had many years ago, that's okay. I think uh, not the problem, but where it can cost you a little bit is if you're showing on your resume that you have these massive gaps without addressing what you were doing. So if you were like, I took a job, kind of in between, part-time or something, and then you don't put it on your resume, but it was like 3 years of your career, I think that's kind of going to be a bit more hindering to your overall application than putting it on and letting the recruiter kind of focus on what's important. I hope that helps.
Oh yeah, that helps. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I see a few in the chat. I don't know if anybody else has a hand raised, but I can try to
No, we
answer some
don't
of
have
those.
any more hands raised. So we have two questions on the chat.
Yep. Okay. So for tech jobs, is having a portfolio website mandatory? Do recruiters visit portfolio website if there is one in like a LinkedIn or resume? So that's a good question. I think if you have a portfolio or a website, um, so I do recruit. We have an engineering team where people will have some sort of website or portfolio, or a marketing team, for example, that you may put together some of your social media posts. If you have it, absolutely include it on your resume. Um, is it mandatory? From my experience, it's not mandatory, but is nice if you've got it. So I know that's maybe not a great answer. In the industry that I'm in, for the roles that I recruit for, have I ever had, let's say, my VP of engineering say, you have to only screen in people who have a website or a portfolio? I've never heard that before. So Hopefully that helps with that question. And then, are there any recruiting cycles or specific times of the year when hiring is at peak in tech companies, especially in Canada or North America? And any other tips on being strategic about the job hunt process? So probably this time of year is one of the lowest because holiday season is coming up. Also, a lot of companies right now are in budget planning for the new year, so they may be, holding things off before the new year starts or aligning it maybe with their fiscal. Um, I would assume that there are probably more jobs available, let's say in the like past Christmas holiday time and in the fall. It's almost like they kind of align ish with like the school starting, like the semester starting, with the summer time kind of being like, I think, like a middle ground. But I would just, if you're actively applying, you should be looking at job boards every single day, multiple times a day, so that you're right away applying. But if you're happy where you are and you're just kind of looking at, when might jobs become available, you can maybe target those times. Right now may not be, a massively busy time for some companies who are recruiting. So I really appreciate all the questions. I have like 20 million more slides. So I can keep going, or I can answer questions. I can continue answering, but I've got lots of other stuff to talk about if you want. I think maybe we're capped with the questions right now, so I can continue, and I'll get to some other stuff. I know I'm hopefully, honestly, if any of you want to stop me and we need to get to other activities, let me know, and I'm happy to stop anytime.
Sure. Please continue with your presentation. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So just to continue here, I'll just show quickly what a not so great, I don't want to say it's bad, but it's a not so great resume looks like to me. There's a lot of like fluff at the top of this resume, basically up until professional experience. I want to see the professional experience at the top. This personal summary this is an example of one that's way too long. They also, bring up lots of things that maybe aren't relevant. I think it's great if somebody has volunteer experience, but it's not what you want your recruiter to see the first thing. I don't actually get to see anything until 3/4 of the way down. If I'm spending 2 to 5 seconds on this, I'm not even getting to it. And there's lots of big paragraphs as opposed to kind of easy standout and easy to read statements. So that's just something that I'm not a full fan of this type of resume. So the job posting and application process, you guys have kind of touched on it. Obviously, every company has a different way of posting jobs and having candidates apply. Some companies use a little bit more AI and some don't. So this is actually an example of one of the ones we have posted right now. It's a super good example of an entry-level customer support specialist. We are recruiting currently in the BC area, but this role comes up a lot of the time for us. So one of the biggest things I would say, because I think a lot of the time we have people who it's very clear that they're like serial applicators in the sense that they're applications. So they apply everywhere. And they're not actually checking even if they are qualified or are a good fit for the role. So my first thing to say is just really read the job posting. I know it's extra time, but it's really important. Like I write this job posting. So I put my time and effort to write something that I hope will help you. So, you read it to see if it actually is relevant for you. Put effort in your application. So we have some application questions. They're not massively long. You'll see there, I kind of blew it up a little bit for a second, but why did you, or where did you first hear about this posting? Not a difficult question to answer. In a few short sentences, tell us why you're interested in this role. Please don't, and I see this too often, because I want a job. Like, really? That's how you're going to answer this question? This is your first time showing me, who you are, and that's what you're going to answer. So take a second to answer these. Make a good first impression. If you can't take the time to answer these questions, what kind of employee will you be, right? And these ultimately help you get screened in. So that would be my tips here. A lot of people too will just put periods or like NA. If like that doesn't work either, I automatically decline somebody if they don't answer these questions. Okay, next, once you've applied, what can you expect kind of, from a recruiter, from a company? Typically, companies will pre-screen you. So this is kind of a step before an actual interview. There's a few ways that companies do this. So, and I think this is such a great stage of, if you've been identified to do a pre-screen, typically we get, potentially 500 applicants, and I might pass, 50 people through a pre-screen. So that's a you did really well if you got to a pre-screen stage. So be really, really proud of yourself if you're getting here, and put a lot of effort into this, because it's really positive. It's not going to be a long thing. They're either going to do a video pre-screen or a phone pre-screen. So that is either me getting on the phone and calling you and talking to you. It's probably going to be about 15 to 20 minutes. And it's really just going over the high level stuff, making sure that at least surface level things seem to fit. And I'll give you some ideas of kind of what a recruiter typically asks, or it might be a video pre-screen. And typically this is where AI comes in, which is great. You can do a one-way video interview pre-screen, which means that you'll get a bunch of questions, and by a bunch I mean like 3. They'll come up on the screen, as you can kind of see in the picture. Why are you interested in working at Recollective? And you're going to record yourself answering that. I think it's a really great way to showcase a little bit more about you. So, again, take it as if it's, this is your first opportunity to show us, your work ethic and what kind of employee you're going to be. It's not the most comfortable thing to sit and record yourself answering. And we get that. If you stumble, if you stutter a little bit, or you get kind of kerfuffled, it's okay. Just try to get back into it. But treat it like an actual interview, in the sense, don't sit in your bed and wear your pajamas. I say that because people have done that, and it's an automatic decline. And do your research on the company. So these are some of the things that you might expect. Like, tell us about your relevant work experience. Why are you looking for a new role? Why do you want to work for us? And there may be a few role-specific questions in here just to get a sense of what your skills are. So be prepared to kind of answer things like this. Actual interviews. So you've applied, you've done a pre-screen, and these are all really cool times too for you to get more knowledge about the company. In all of my pre-screens, we do a one-way video interview. I share a video about our compensation. So before you even invest any time, you know exactly what the salary range is and what our philosophy is on paying people. So sometimes, even if it feels like you're maybe putting some effort into the company and they haven't put effort into you yet, actually we have. And hopefully, you can get a bit about our culture as you go through the process. But interviews, so you can do virtual interviews or you can do in-person interviews. I think both are great. Virtual interviews are wonderful when you're not in the same location, and I think in-person interviews are amazing when you are in the same location and can make that work. At our company, we actually fly people in to do in-person interviews. Seeing our office, meeting our people in person, I think there's just so much more that you can get doing that. So come prepared. I sit and I study somebody's resume. I give the managers all of these great resources. They sit, they prepare. They are basically doing all this research on you. So you should come prepared as well. Research the company. What I mean by that is go on the company's website and like scour through the company, figure out at least surface level what they do. Go to their career page. A lot of the time they'll have info on their culture. Go to their company LinkedIn. So the same way that I'm doing this for you, you should do it for us too. This is a two-way street. I want to get the best person for the company, but you also want to make sure that you're going to be happy at this company, and you can't do that by not knowing anything about them. Go to Glassdoor, go to Aluta, go to Indeed, read the reviews. People leave reviews. Typically, like anything, we tend to leave reviews when we're upset. You don't necessarily, go and have a great ice cream and then leave a review on that ice cream place because you had a good ice cream. You typically go and leave a review when you've had a really poor experience. But typically, if the reviews are the more positive reviews outweigh the negative reviews, you're probably in a good spot. And there's nothing wrong with targeting and trying to speak to employees who work at that company. Obviously, don't be maybe annoying about it, or you should thank the people that agree to speak with you. But it is important and a good thing to speak to employees at the company. Of course, always put your best foot forward in the sense of, we don't have a lot of, even if we have 3 rounds of interviews, we're trying to really get a good sense of you through only really 3 times meeting you. So always put your best foot forward. Here are some sample interview questions. Of course, every role is going to have specific questions about the role, and I don't want to outline and bore you through all of these questions. But the big things that you should be prepared to talk about are walk me through your work experience. What did you do in each role? I think for this particular presentation, I think there may be a part maybe where you do an elevator pitch. But you should know and have something prepared to talk about what you did at each role, and have it, short. Let the recruiter or the interviewer ask you more questions afterwards, but being able to just say, I did this at this particular company, it is really helpful. Why you went from one role to another, and simply stating I wanted growth is probably not going to be enough. We want to know who you are as a real person. There's no point to fake it. We're going to see through that at one point. And having a career progression is totally fine. If you just really didn't like where you worked, I'd much rather hear that and why you didn't like it, and that we're going to be way better than just, oh, I wanted growth, especially when it's not actually showing that you've had growth. And why are you looking now, other than just I want a job or I need money? Listen, we all need a job and we all need money. But beyond that, what are you actually looking for in your next role? And then why did you apply to our company? If you can't answer that question, the company's automatically just going to go like, okay, they haven't even thought about it. So those are some important ones. Interview etiquette. How do I dress? Some of these questions. If it's virtual, where should I be located? If it's in person, do I arrive early? If so, how early? So how do you dress in any part of the interview or of the selection process? I would say kind of dress to impress. Always go. If you have a more casual outfit and a more dressy outfit, go with the more dressy one. It's so much easier if you maybe wear a suit and tie to a company, interview, and the other person's a bit more casual, to go, oh my goodness, I brought out my best dress for you. Goodness, I'm so sorry. Next time I'll come and meet you casual, more halfway. I just wanted to impress you than to show up and roll up in jeans and a t-shirt, and the person you're meeting with is in a suit, and that's really a lot harder to navigate. If it's virtual, where do you do it? You can do it like me, where I've got, a little bit of a home office. And the beauty with having the backgrounds now that you can really be anywhere, but be somewhere that you're not going to have any distractions. Somebody's not going to come, waltzing behind you. Listen, we all nowadays, especially with the pandemic, we've all got pets and whatnot at home. If a cat jumps into your lap, not a huge deal, but try to reduce the distractions as much as possible. Should I research who I'm meeting? Yes, you should. You should know a little bit about who you're meeting, what their title is, what they do. There's nothing more than managers like more than having somebody come and go, hey, I creeped your LinkedIn. I see you joined the company 2 years ago and that you were at X company before. Tell me about that. That's such a nice thing to hear. And how about asking about comp? How about asking about benefits and vacation? Should you ask about that stuff? Absolutely, you should ask. And it's totally okay to ask. I think the more important thing is how you ask. If you just say, what are you going to pay me? That's probably not going to go over very well. You can ask things like, what's your compensation philosophy? How do you do performance reviews? Do you do performance reviews? Do you do compensation reviews? How do people learn and grow at your company? Would you happen to have a salary range that you're projecting for this role? Or if you have a range that you would like, that you have in mind, it's totally okay to be, hey, these are around my salary expectations. How does that line up with your compensation? And I see compensation as more than just money. Would you mind talking to me a little bit about the benefits that your company offers? What's the vacation? These are all totally fine questions to ask. So getting close to the end here, references, you've gone through your interview. A lot of companies will ask for references as part of the process. We do that. We think it's a super great opportunity to learn more about you by checking in with some of your previous managers, people that you've reported to. There's nothing that shows us more how you're going to do than past experience. So the one or the few things I guess I'll say is be smart with who you choose and who you use to be a reference. Ideally, it's somebody who's recent that you've worked with recently, not 20 years ago. The amount of references I get back that go, oh man, I don't really remember this person because it's been 20 years. It's not it's not a good reference. What's relevant to the role? If you're applying, to be a software developer, but you provide somebody who was your supervisor at a grocery store, again, not really relevant to the role. I do understand that if you're a student, you don't have a lot to pull from. Ultimately, you're probably not applying to be like a senior, full stack engineer, or you're probably not applying to be, the CEO of a company. You're probably applying for a more entry level position. So though, giving a reference that is maybe not as relevant is totally fine. And don't call on your sister to give you a reference. It's not. We've had grandparents been given as references. It's not it. It's just not going to set you up for success. Line them up before you get asked, in the sense of, if I'm going to start applying to jobs, I'm going to reach out to my managers from the past and say, hey, I'm going to start, and I'm not saying the people that you currently work for if you're working, but maybe previous references or people I've worked for, to say, hey, I'm actually going to start my job search. I'm probably going to get some, references that I'll need. Would you mind being a reference for me? And you can prep them in the sense of, hey, you're probably going to get reached out to soon by X company, and they're going to ask you about me. It's for this role. Here's a little summary of the things that I accomplished while working with you. I do see a question came in. So let me, oh, okay, sorry, it's not a question. I will leave that there then. So in any case, that's what I have to say about references. Talk to your recruiter if you have any concerns about providing a reference. We're here, we're human, and we can help you pick a reference as well. That'll help, get you the best success. But just, note that it's part of the process, and it's only going to help you. Usually we don't pick people who are going to say bad things about us, right? Offers. Ideally, you get offers with an S. You get more than one, but no, even if you get one offer, that's amazing. But the goal obviously is for you to get maybe a few, who knows? I think the first thing is be thankful, show gratitude. This is amazing. You're getting an offer. This employer has put time and effort into you. And if you're going to accept, that's great. Obviously, we're hoping that you'd be thankful. But even if you're going to decline, you don't know, especially recruiters. The beauty of being a recruiter is I can be a recruiter for any company. So you don't know when you're going to maybe cross me in the future at a totally different company. So if I make you an offer and you're rude or you ghost me, I'm going to remember that. Also, recruiters talk. And I know that, if you've been applying, you very well may have been ghosted by recruiters as well. So it's a two-way street. We do owe you respect as well. But it's always great to also be thankful. And when you get an offer, can I negotiate an offer? It's so big right now to ask for more money. Right at the end of the day, I think the sentiment is, what do I have to lose? They're going to tell me no, and I still get a great salary, or they say yes and they give me more. I think there's a way maybe to do it. If you truly feel like it's unfair what you've been offered and it's really low, ideally the company that you've been going through the interview process with, you've been able to be open about it. I think that if you're interviewing with a company and they never share any sort of range or compensation information until the very end, it's not a very transparent company. Is that really the company you want to be working for? Some companies don't have ranges. They're maybe a lot smaller. They haven't gotten to that stage yet. And so I think there is a way to say, hey, I'm so thankful. I'm so grateful. I really, really would love to work with you. But ultimately, I do feel that this offer is a touch on the low side. You can sandwich it in the sense of, you say something positive, get your point across, and I think it's a bit low. Here's why I think I can contribute X, Y, Z, and here's what I would be looking for. And then, but then again, sandwich it with but I can't wait, and I'm really excited. I really hope that I can join your team. How do you accept, in the sense of not signing on the dotted line? But I think there's, show excitement, get excited with them. And then how do I decline? Let's say you get 2 offers and you really want one and the other one, you know, you want to decline it. Again, you don't know when you're going to meet that recruiter again, so be polite with the recruiter or with the hiring manager with declining. And you know, I would always leave the door open of, you know, I really appreciated everything throughout the process. I'm, you know, at this point going to decline this offer. If you want to give feedback, you can. You don't have to. And say, but you know, I think that there's potential for the future. I'd love to stay in touch. So that's what I think in terms of offers. What I will say. And finally, are we recruiting? Is Recollective recruiting? We're always recruiting. We're always wanting to get great talent. I know that for you guys, you know, your potential grad students, maybe you'll be, or not potential grad students, you are grad students, but you're potentially graduating soon is what I meant to say. So, you know, if anything, obviously about the presentation, you know, sounded interesting to you. I clearly love where I work. And I think Recollective being in Ottawa is awesome for those who are also based in Ottawa, but we do have a very remote team. We have people all over the world. And we are recruiting, I would say, if you know, you're targeting some more of those entry level roles, customer support specialist is a great role to keep an eye out for if you're just looking for a way to kind of to get into the company. If you're more on the sales side, a sales development representative role is a great role to look out for. We do co-ops. Clearly, we have an amazing co-op student, you know, Oro, who is with us. We do, I guess, fortunately for us, but maybe unfortunately, already have our winter co-ops lined up, but we will be recruiting for summer co-ops probably very soon. So definitely keep an eye. We typically post those roles on our website as well as through, I think you guys use the Navigator, whatever uOttawa uses. We do go through them as well. So keep an eye there. And you can always reach out to me at any time if you're curious about opportunities. We don't have a lot of roles right now, but you know, we'll probably be ramping things up in the future. So I think I went 5 minutes over my allotted time to present. So that's everything. Oh, there's a question. If you're not able to negotiate in way of money, can we negotiate in compensation? Example, more yearly holidays. What's your take on this? You can. So for us, for example, and just to kind of give you not a sneak peek, but a view as to how we set things, I don't just come out, let's say, with, you know, I make an offer and I'm like, today I'm going to offer them 4 weeks paid vacation, but tomorrow I'm going to offer somebody else 3 weeks paid vacation. It's very structured. So everybody in the company at a certain level will get 3 weeks paid vacation. If you've been with the company for 5 years or more, then you go up to 4 weeks. Or if you're at a certain level in the sense of, you know, if you're maybe a manager or a VP, you get a certain level as well as vacation. So the only problem, there's nothing wrong with asking for it, but the only problem is that sometimes we can't do anything because then you are all of a sudden making more than everybody else in the company. So internal equity is really important. I think if a company has that as their reasoning, then what you can take from that is, I'm going to be treated fairly and well at this company, and they don't just, you know, move people up just because. But you can ask. There's nothing wrong with asking. Again, I think it's all in the delivery. So I hope that helps. Some companies have a little bit more leeway there, so they may go, yeah, you know what, we'll stick on an extra week of vacation for sure. And I think it's important to remember that compensation, and as you put it in this question, it's not just money. There's so many extra things that go into that. So yeah.
Thank you so
I'll
much.
stop sharing.
No worries.
Problem.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for such a useful presentation. I think most of our questions have already been answered.
Yeah.
I'd like to request Haripriya now to start the student activity that we have planned. Over to you, Haripriya.
Yeah, good evening to everyone in this meeting. So we have a new event for the participants. Like we have questions for them to answer. So I'll just share my screen. And the participants here, you can scan the QR code that comes on the screen, and you can start answering the questions. So as soon as you start answering, each and every question will be addressed for any queries. Okay. So I'm just sharing my screen. Just the participants, you need not think too much. Just give your answers. It's a fun game. Okay. Yeah.
We can see your screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
just present.
Yes, I'm presenting. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. Can everyone see this first slide?
Yes.
Yes. So
yes.
you can scan the QR code and you can go to the link of this question.
Yeah, we can see the questions. Yes.
Yes. So if anybody has any queries, yeah, we've got responses.
Yeah.
Yes. And participants, kindly reach out in the chat if you have any issues with logging into this and giving your answers.
Oh, I love the word map. They're so fun.
I think we have some common answers: nervousness, fear.
Yeah, I think that's very typical. I think even if you do 100 interviews, you're never not gonna probably be nervous. And I will say, as a recruiter, I work to prep our hiring managers, so our managers at where we work, to do interviews. And I think they are probably more nervous than you are. If you knew what our plan was and what actually happened, sometimes, for the most part, I think it goes well. But they come back with, I didn't ask any of the questions I meant to ask. I don't even know anything about them. All we talked about is our hobbies and what we liked. So it's tough. It's really tough on both sides. I think practice is what helps to alleviate some of that fear. So even when you're nervous, you can kind of go, okay, I answered this question at home like 12 times with my mom, or my friend or my roommate or whatever, and that kind of helps, especially that I would go blank. There's also totally nothing wrong with, and we hope it happens, that if somebody asks you a question, that you take a sec to like breathe. Awkward silences can be awkward, but they don't always have to be. I'd much rather you take a second to gather your thoughts and, spit out a good answer than just ramble.
Also, I think the recruiter has lots of things to make the candidate comfortable with the situation, with the interview. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, we do try to have icebreakers or, ways to kind of try to relate. The first few questions we know are going to be a little bit more scripted, or not scripted, but they're going to be a little bit more tense. And then we know that if by the end of it, the candidate's opened up and is more relaxed, we know it's not a real life situation. It doesn't show real life.
Yeah, that is the main key for a candidate to go through the interview process without any stress of interview the to answer the questions. So when they are comfortable in the beginning, I think they would be able to answer the other questions easily.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And something I hear a lot from my boss is that it's not an interview competition. At the end of the day, we want to know who you are as a person. It's not the person who comes in and who answers every question perfectly. Ultimately, that's going to win. When you just open up and are you, that's it. It shows.
Let's move on to the second question.
Yeah. Second question. So this is the second question.
So Rachel, if you could see the option, we have 3 options for the question.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm waiting to say anything. I want to let people.
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
But yeah, I see the 3 options.
Okay.
This is fun. I've never used this Mentimeter, but this is cute. This is cool.
Yeah. It's like it keeps the session going on, and yeah, and
Yeah.
yes, it's
So
exciting.
it's funny. I don't think either any of these things is a bad vote. I think they're all quite important.
Okay.
At the end of the day, I do think this makes sense that maybe dressing appropriately is not going to be the top vote. I do agree that the other ones on the side, knowing your resume and how you best fit the job and the knowledge about the company or the organization are likely more important than dressing appropriately. But it is such a package. I think all of these things together are probably going to set you up for the most success. It's funny how knowing your own resume, it's so hard. Somebody asks you to talk about yourself and you're like, I don't know what I've done. And it's like, it's your own life. But it is true. You have to study your own resume and how you fit the job. But and knowing about the company is so important.
Mhm. Yeah, maybe it's the recent times that we have more number of virtual interviews rather than in-person interviews, right? So, do you think that could be one of the reasons where the dressing appropriately option was not picked up by most of the candidates? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it plays a role? Does the virtual interviews plays a role in this dressing appropriately kind of an option in an interview?
Yeah, it's a great question or kind of a great thought to link those two.
Mhm.
Ultimately, yes, I think the reality is that people feel like they can hide a little bit behind the camera. They don't need to dress a certain way. I think it's just as important
Mhm.
to dress appropriately, whether it's a virtual interview, an in-person interview, or even a video pre-screen, right? Even if there's not a
Yes.
recruiter currently present, I think it's still important to dress appropriately, and that can mean a lot of different things. Of course, it's not to say you have to dress, for example, in a blazer or in a suit and tie every time. You can go very much business casual, and that's totally fine.
Okay.
But yeah, you should. As I'd mentioned, we only have a few times when we're trying to get to know you. We only see you a
Yeah.
few times potentially before we make a decision. So why not put your best foot forward every single time? So it's definitely important.
Okay. So again, another question regarding the knowledge about the company or the organization. It's like, are recruiters like they are very keen into knowing why is the candidate familiar with the company?
Yeah. Yeah. We definitely want. I want the candidate to come to the interview having done some research
Okay.
Do you need to know everything about the company? Absolutely not.
Okay.
But I've had candidates come to me in an interview, and one of the questions they ask is, "What do you guys do? Like,
Okay.
are you?" I've studied you, I've researched you, I know what you've done, and you haven't even taken a second to know what we do. You can ask if you're unsure about what a company does. Some company websites aren't super clear, or you want to know more. You can always say, "Listen, I checked out your company LinkedIn, I checked out your company website, and I can tell that for Recollective that you're in the market research industry, which I think is really great. Insights are super important into understanding or making business decisions. But would you mind telling me a little bit more how this particular department
Yeah.
fits in with the entire company? Or could you tell me a little bit more about kind of your long-term goals or how your company fits in with the competitors in the market? Like there's so many ways that you can come across as very knowledgeable, putting your research into play and still getting a bit more without just going, what does your company do?
Yeah. That was, yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, shall we go to the next question?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So,
So about the research about the company, I'd like to share my own experience. So I remember in one of my interviews, they work with satellites. So I'm
Okay.
currently working as a data analyst at the National Defense. So I
Cool.
remember during my interview, I researched a lot about what they do. And during the interview, when they asked me, do you have any questions? I intentionally asked about their satellites in a very technical terms about their work. And they were so impressed. They were like, okay, you studied a lot about us. And obviously I got hired because they liked me and they liked that I asked the question. So we asked the students to submit the questions to you, Rachel.
Yep.
So lots of people have actually asked about this, that how to handle, like when the recruiter asks, do you have any questions for us, how to handle that kind of question. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think it does kind of sometimes stump people of, hey, do you have any questions? And if you haven't, the thing is if you haven't done any research, and you're clearly not interested, you probably won't come with any questions. Um, and that's not to say that people who don't have any questions are not not going to be ultimately good workers, but I think you should always come prepared with some questions. You should be curious. This could potentially be where you work for a long time. Don't you want to know about a little bit about the company? I think some questions will flow naturally in an actual interview setting, so you may kind of ask your questions throughout, and then at the end, if a recruiter goes, so do you have any other questions, it's totally okay to say, well, I asked like all my questions kind of throughout the interview. You did a great job in addressing them. Thank you for keeping this more as a conversational type of interview. So I don't have any more questions at this time. But if you didn't have a chance to ask the questions throughout, I think some good questions, and I do see a question actually came in, and I'll get to that. I think a great question would be, what does a day in the life of this role look like? What exactly, what type of projects will I be working on? If you didn't get a chance to talk about that, if you're meeting with your direct manager, who could potentially be your direct manager, you could say, what's your management style? Like, how do you lead your team? What are some of the top performers in your team? Like, why are they top performers? Why did you join Recollective? What's your favorite thing about Recollective? I don't love that one as much, but I think it can be a cool question to ask if you're like, actually, I'm really curious. I took a look at your LinkedIn. I noticed you joined the company a year ago, but you were at a really great company before that. Why did you make that jump? What made you want to come here? You could ask, how would you describe the company culture? You could ask, what does learning and development look like here? How have you gone about growing at the company? um, how does this particular role fit in with the company as a whole? Like, what's our goal, kind of thing? What are some of your biggest challenges on this team? You could even ask like a really simple question, but is there anything else I can do to showcase my experience, my skills? Or can you tell me more about, and this is kind of the question of, can we ask what is your expected salary, or what's the salary range for this role? I think it's a totally fair question to ask that. you can absolutely ask, asking about, hey, what are the benefits? Ideally, you know, a great workplace will tell you that before you have to ask, like ours does. No, I'm just kidding. But some companies have it already laid out and they'll already provide you with some of that information, which is nice. But if they haven't, oh my gosh, it's totally part of figuring out if you want to join this company. So don't just ask, what are you going to pay me? You know, how do you
Yes.
approach compensation at this company?
Yeah.
Kind of how I talked about it before. Can we
But
ask about?
should we,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
sorry, so but should we ask these questions during our first interview with that company? So the first
Right.
conversation, can we ask about the salary, or should we wait till they, confirm us, give us the offer letter, and then we talk about the salary?
So I think it's totally fair to ask, or as early on in the process as possible. Typically, a company will have a salary range of some sort set aside, or they'll know in their mind kind of what's the budget for this role. Like I said, there may be some companies who are a lot smaller who maybe don't know it, but they'll be very honest about that and say, look, if you ask about it, they might say, look, we don't know yet. We think you're great, and let's continue getting to know each other. They might ask you what your salary expectations are, which please feel free to share. If you're not comfortable sharing a particular number, you can share a range yourself. The same way that a company can share a range, you can share a range. But yeah, you can absolutely, don't be scared to ask those questions. If a company doesn't respond well to you, it probably is a bit of a flag for you. There's a way to ask it. I do see a question that came into the chat of, can we ask about the projects the recruiters are working on in order to understand how the company handles their projects and their culture? Oh yeah, absolutely. Also, the more that you get to know the people who work there and asking maybe about things like that, the more you're going to understand their company culture, right? And how they kind of deal with things. If you're unaware about the salary which is offered, and if we were to ask, what's your expectations? Can we cross question them? What is the salary range for the role? Okay, so I think the question is saying, like, if somebody says, what's your expectations? And then you go and you don't answer and you go, well, what are yours, or what's your salary range? It's it's tough if a recruiter's coming out and asking you a question, and then it can be kind of seen as maybe a bit confrontational if you choose not to answer their question and bounce the question back at them. If you just aren't sure, you're not comfortable sharing what your salary ranges or your expectations are, you can say, I'm ready and excited about this role. I'm not exactly sure yet, what the range should be. I'm sure that if and when we get to an offer, that you'll present a really fair offer for me. But hey, do you by any chance have a range that you can share with me? That's okay to kind of frame it that way. I know it doesn't necessarily give you a great answer, but it's important, if you're going to apply for a role, if you're going to have an interview, that you've done your own research too about, one, we all know probably what we need in order to pay bills, but what are you worth? If you're applying for a customer support role, are you going to ask for $100,000? Probably not. I see there's a hand raised.
Yes,
Um,
Parvati?
I have a question. So initially, in the start of the presentation, Rachel mentioned that she liked how Recollective was culturally fit for her. She liked the culture, work culture here. So during an interview, how do you assess if the person you're interviewing is culturally fit for the organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as a company, and I think this is not just a one person thing, as a company, whether you've identified what your company culture is, or it's just kind of been created as time goes on, I think it's important, though, for the company themselves to understand what their company culture is. What are the things that are important to them? Once it's articulated, it's a little bit easier to evaluate that, or to see if other people have that. We're a very transparent we have a very transparent company culture, for example. So we do have certain questions that we might ask candidates around that. For example, are you somebody maybe who would prefer to fill out an anonymous survey, or are you somebody who is more direct with your feedback? Somebody who hides behind a survey and doesn't want to really talk to their manager about how they're feeling may not, be the best fit with us, because we're very transparent, we're very open. So there, we do have certain questions that we can ask. It's also something that if you just know and you experience it every day, you can sometimes gauge that throughout every process or every stage. We're very big on collaboration, teamwork. Doesn't mean that we need people to be in the office every day, all the time, but the willingness to want to get together, to, even if you're not in the same city, but to want to visit the office at times is another key thing that we ask. If you're wanting to, be fully remote, there is legit nothing wrong with that. But it probably won't line up with what our company culture is. So there are a few things that we can ask to see if that lines up. I'm not sure if that fully answers. I think it really depends on the company.
Okay. And one last question from my side.
Yeah.
If we were to have a gap in our resume,
Yeah.
what would be the right approach to answer when the recruiter asks us why this gap, or what was the reason why this gap is shown on a resume?
Yeah, I would go straight up honesty. There's probably a really good reason why you had a gap. Um, Even if that, especially in these times, the tech world especially, there's a lot of layoffs. We're not inhumane, and I know a lot of colleagues of mine who are extremely smart and who have been laid off. It's an unfortunate thing that happens. It's just so much better to say the truth. We'll feel that in your answer, that if it's the truth, or something happened, or I don't know, some people move. So they may move countries, and that takes a lot of time. So you may not have wanted to work, or other things in life happen. You've gone back to school or whatever. I would just be honest with it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I'd much
That
rather
answered my
have
question.
somebody address it than kind of hide behind it. Then that leaves, it could be a totally legit reason, but it leaves us to think, are there flags there? Is there something? Why are they being dishonest?
Okay. Yeah.
Rachel, would you mind if we share your LinkedIn contact on our chat so that people can reach
Oh,
out to you?
for
Okay,
sure.
perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
Of course, of course. Yes, any
So I
other?
have a question. So
Yeah.
how does the Recollective approach the follow-up for candidates?
You're meaning, like, let's say you've come in for an interview, and then what happens? Like, how do we follow
Yeah.
up with candidates?
Yes, yes. Of course, I'd just like
Yep.
to add, should the candidates reach out to the
Mhm.
company for follow-up?
Okay, good. Two questions. So how do we approach it? My approach is to get back to every single person. So the way that we do it is, typically, if you have applied and I've reviewed your resume and you are not the right fit, you will get an email. It's going to be more of a standard email. Um, our approach is that the more time you invest with us, the more personalized and the more customized we're going to get with telling you maybe why we haven't gone forward, or that we're going to go forward. Um, if you've interviewed with us, our hiring managers will call you directly, and they will walk you through either, why you didn't get the role. If you have, and you're continuing on the process, it's usually I walk you through the process, and I'll make sure things are smooth, so you'll hear from me. Um, we are not, I know maybe some people are wondering or ask a lot. I get this a lot. Can you give me more feedback on why I didn't, make this position? Um, Unfortunately, I'm only one person, who does the recruiting. So I think it'd be a full-time job for me to reply to every single person and give feedback. It's unfortunate that I can't give feedback to every single person. We will give feedback to those who have interviewed with us. Otherwise, we don't have, for example, a system that will provide you with a ton of feedback otherwise. But if you've invested time in our process, we will give you feedback. And should a candidate follow up after an interview, in the sense of, maybe I assume what you're talking about is like send a thank you note or ask, what's next steps? I think it used to be so important part of the process that after every interview, if the interviewer or interviewee, sorry, didn't send a thank you follow up, the hiring manager would say, I don't want to continue with them. This was like a long time ago, but that would be part of almost the evaluation process. It's not like that anymore. I think if you want to stand out, sending a thank you message is really great. Ensure if you're gonna any communications, just make sure there are no errors. But a thank you note is great. And then asking, let's say you haven't heard after a week or a few days, should I follow up to see the status? There's nothing wrong with reaching out to the recruiter. Obviously, don't do it too much. But if you haven't heard after a week, you can. I'm more than happy to say, oh my goodness, we're so sorry. There's a bit of a delay. I'll get to you soon. I think it's a nice touch if the candidate's clearly interested enough to follow up. I wouldn't do it after like 2 days or a day. Give there's some internal processes that have to happen at times. But yeah, those would be my advice there. Unless you're dealing too with the hiring manager, don't really bug the hiring manager too much. You can deal with the recruiter.
So, would you like to share some examples of interview behaviors that can create a negative impression on the recruiter's mind?
Yeah, being late is not a good place to start, and that goes for in person and virtually. I'm sure we've all had that where people are late to meetings. It happens. If that happens, the first thing I would say for you to do is to apologize profusely, but that will definitely start off a negative or give a negative impression. This I think goes to some of the questions you guys had on should I or can I ask about salary, but I think making upfront demands right away. So saying you come to a first interview, you're like, okay, I'm going to need $130,000. I'm going to need 4 weeks paid vacation, and I need a 3-year plan into a leadership role for me to continue. Those all very well may be part of the role, but coming in and just demanding things right away, it's going to be a bit of a negative impression until kind of to your question you asked earlier, like, can we ask about salary on the first interview? I think there's a way to go about it, but don't make it sound like you're demanding. If it's whether it's virtual or not, but being incredibly distracted, your phone's going off, people are walking everywhere in the background, you're clearly looking elsewhere, that would lead to a negative impression, especially virtually. I think it's so easy to feel like the recruiter or the interviewer can't see where your eyes are going, but we totally can. It's okay to say, listen, I have 2 screens. I may look over at one. That's okay. Not being prepared. Let's say you don't even know how to answer the basic question about yourself. We already talked about this one, but there was an interview that I did. I wore, and at our workplace, this is kind of a typical outfit that I'll wear. I was wearing heels, and that's great. I dressed up for the interview because I was excited and wanted to give a good impression to the candidate. And they came in sweatpants and like literally Nike slides. And I was like, what's going on? That would immediately, I was like, okay, red flags. So those are a few things that I think would be give a negative impression.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question from students. They ask how to master situational questions.
Yeah. So I would assume when you're saying situational questions, it's like the interviewer says, how would you approach, like I'm going to give you a hypothetical situation and what would you do kind of thing. I assume that's kind of what you mean by situational question or
Yes.
situational questions. Yeah, a lot of recruiters do that. It's part of interviews, to kind of put you in a potential situation and see what you would do. One, make sure you understand the question. You don't hesitate to ask clarifying questions to ensure you really, have all the information. I think if you're going to think about structuring your question or your answer, sorry, I guess think in terms of the overall situation. What was your part in the solution? If you talk about, oh, well, my manager did this and my manager did that and my colleague did this, like, what did you do in that situation? I think really focusing on your role will help you kind of answer the question better. What solution did you get to? How did you get to that solution? Like, what was the result? How did that make you feel? All of those things. I think we've probably all heard of the STAR method. Situation, task, I think action and result. You can kind of structure your answer that way. Draw obviously on your past experience if you can. Also, you can really talk through kind of your thought process. We all know that, like, if you get asked to a math question on an exam, sometimes the professor will look more at what your work is and how you got to the answer than what the actual answer is. It's the same thing with those questions. They want to hear, you're presented with a hypothetical situation that may or, be very relevant to the job. How do you get to that end result? It maybe isn't all about the end result, but it's more how you think through it.
So following to your answer, if the recruiter asked for what was the last project that you have done,
Yeah.
so it's better to just elaborate on what you do as a experience, or a topic specific is really important. Yeah, like imagine you do something about software, the result is really important for them, or just the way that you start the project, how you do it, and it doesn't matter that you have any like you ended up with the results or not.
Yeah, I guess it does depend, of course, the question or the job that you're applying to. Some questions or roles that may be a little bit more focused, of course, on what the actual result is. I'm trying to think of an example of a situational question. I just can't think of one off the top of my head. But if you've never, and I think somebody had kind of asked this, but like let's say you've never had that particular experience, or you've never had been in that situation, you can be honest, like, hey, I've never actually done this before. I've never actually been in that situation before, but here's how I would go about getting to that result, or go about, my thought process. That could work too. Situational questions can definitely be hard. I don't think they honestly expect you to know the answer. It's more how you get to there, and how do you reason? How do you problem solve? Are you asking questions to clarify? So imagine you're on the job, your manager gives you something to do, you don't know how to do it. They're wondering, what are you going to do? Are you just going to sit there and go off in a back room for 5 hours and not figure something out? Are you going to ask questions? Are you going to pull from some of your experience? Are you going to go research and then come back and ask clarifying questions? So hopefully that kind of helps.
Yes, thank you.
Cool.
We have a few questions on the chat as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, so are virtual interviews more common nowadays than in-person interviews in Canada? Do you take virtual or in-person interviews when hiring co-op students? So good question. Virtual interviews are typically more common, yes, nowadays than they have been in the past. Are they more common than in-person interviews? I would venture a guess that they probably are, just because our world now is opening up. We're hiring people who aren't physically in the same location. We do really value in-person interviews here at Recollective. And so we will typically start with virtual and then lead to an in-person interview for an advanced stage in the process. So we're not going to get everybody in for an in-person right away. So yes, most of and the bulk of our interviews are virtual to start with. Do we take virtual or in-person interviews while hiring co-op students? So our process typically for hiring co-op students is we will get their application, I will review. The students who are selected to move forward will do a one-way video interview. It's that pre-screen tool where they are presented with a few questions, and then they respond by recording themselves. And then we will then do a virtual interview with our VP of engineering, who will basically lead the interview and get to know you better as a co-op student. So if you're maybe in Ottawa, then potentially we would do an in-person interview. But typically we try to keep the playing field even, so we do virtual.
We also have a question above that from Jay that says, what sort of behavioral questions that can be asked for understanding soft skills? Like, can you tell me what you did when you had a conflict with your colleagues?
So you're wondering what sort of behavioral questions can be
Yeah, I
asked
guess
for
we already
understanding?
answered it,
Oh,
so you
okay.
can just avoid it, ignore it. Yeah.
Okay.
Just one
Okay.
suggestion that that there is a star method that generally people tend to use
Yeah.
in behavioral questions, so that gives a guideline on how to answer it. So just
Yeah, it's hard because there's no one perfect answer either, right? It's very it depends on who you are and how you answer. Um, but if it's just, don't just say I don't know, or well I guess I would do this. At least try. to answer the question, and often talk about you. Don't lead it with. You can say that you worked in a team, but what did you do? Ultimately, the recruiter wants to understand, or the interviewer wants to understand, what was your part in this whole process. Okay, now on to, I think this next question is, are there product management roles at Recollective, specifically associate level? So it's a good question. We actually did just hire a product manager. So we do have a product team. Actually, one of our co-founders is our chief product officer. So we have a really great product team. So we did just hire somebody. So there isn't anybody, or there isn't a role posted for that team right now. It's possible that within the next year or so, our recent product manager that we did hire started about like 2-ish months ago. Or a month ago, I think now. So we probably won't be recruiting for another one for a little bit. And before I get to this other question, I actually got a note from Oro who made a really good point that I did forget to mention earlier. But what happens, and something that is a great way to make your application stand out, is if you know somebody at the company, and being referred is a great way. So if you know somebody who works at a particular company, you can ask them, hey, do you have any positions open? I would be interested. They can refer you into the company, which is awesome, and tell you about the company. And if they truly know you, that's amazing. That's a really great way to stand out. I know that some of the questions that we've had, that I've just received from candidates in the past, is how do I make my application stand out? That's awesome. But what happens is that you have to make sure that you actually know this person, that they are aware that you're going to use them as a referral. Just sort of the impromptu referrals, or putting a random person who works there's name on your application as somebody who referred you, is not okay. It's actually going to probably be detrimental to your application, because you didn't actually get consent. This person doesn't know you. So just be really careful with that. There are some really great ways to stand out, which being referred is one of them. Make sure it's an actual legit referral before putting somebody's name. How to showcase our individual strengths during a group interview or group discussions. I'm only chuckling because I don't actually have experience. And I'm assuming what you're meaning by group interview or group discussion is multiple candidates being interviewed, or are you saying it's a panel like multiple interviewers? I think what you're meaning is multiple candidates in one interview.
I think she meant, multiple candidates.
That must be so stressful.
Yeah.
I've never done that. I can't imagine sitting in a room with like 3 other recruiters all trying to get the same job. That must be so stressful. Like being in an interview together and you're all interviewing for the same job. So I don't have a lot of advice, unfortunately, to give, just because I don't want to pull on something I've never done myself. We have multiple managers interviewing one person, so you're the only person trying to get the job, but not the other way around. I have heard of this happen though, and I feel for anybody who's been in a situation like that. I can only imagine it's got to be tough to try to stand out. I guess it work with the people around you. If you're obviously don't interrupt people. That's respect to not do that. But when you have a chance, you can try to showcase your skills, but that's tough.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't have a better answer there.
Also, another question from my side. So when a recruiter asks us, give us an elevator pitch.
Yeah.
What is the easiest way to impress the recruiter? What would be the right answer for that?
Yeah, I mean, do recruiters ask you that?
Or
do you guys get
ask
asked that question?
Or they ask you, tell us about yourself, introduce yourself. And I think that's
Okay.
the first impression that you'd like to create on recruiter's mind.
That's such a of course, my go-to question is, and I guess maybe we're trying to get ish at the same thing, but such an open-ended question like that is hard to answer. So if you've ever been asked to give an elevator pitch, like I don't even know what my elevator pitch would be about myself. So that's a tough thing to ask or to answer. But typically what my go-to question is, walk me through your work experience, tell me about your experience and how that's led you to where you are today. I like the whole story. I guess if somebody's asking you for an elevator pitch, keep it short, of course. give like a really brief summary on your professional background. I guess mine would be, I've been in recruiting for 5 years. I currently work for a SaaS market research company called Recollective, based out of Ottawa. My particular background is not there. There are different recruiters or different ways you can be a recruiter, in the sense that you can be very specialized in one type of recruiting or recruitment or one type of position, or you can be more of kind of a generalist. You can have experience recruiting for all different types of positions. So I would probably want to focus on saying something like I focus on connecting with talent across all positions and all departments to ultimately hire best candidates for the role. If you've won any awards or particular achievements, I can especially think of in sales. You've sold a certain high number, for example, of in dollar amounts, you might want to mention that. I think things that I would maybe say to avoid, because in some of our questions we do ask people to introduce themselves by talking about their previous experience or their relevant work or their relevant education. And people maybe get nervous and they start talking about more personal things. Like they'll say, oh, I'm 20 years old and I'm a mom and I have a dog. Those are things probably it's not relevant, and you should probably avoid. But yeah.
Also, one other question.
Yeah.
If we were to be asked a question like, how do you spend your time outside of work?
Yeah.
What should and what shouldn't we answer with?
So if somebody is specifically asking you how you spend your time outside of work, and you feel comfortable sharing, let's say that you have a family or whatnot, that's okay. That's on you if you want to share that. You don't have to. I think some good responses, obviously anything actually true. If you're part of a sports team, that's really great to share. If you're into reading, that can be great to share. Um, if you're watching a particular television show, perhaps that's really interesting that you might connect with the recruiter. Like there's nothing wrong with if they're specifically asking you to talk about stuff outside of work. But you don't have to share very personal things. I would probably keep it surface level, and then maybe go deeper if you feel comfortable.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're like a runner or something, you can say, oh, my personal time, I really enjoy running in my community, or I volunteer at the local library, something like that. I do not run or volunteer at my local library, but something like that could be a potential thing. I'd probably say that I spend a lot of time with my daughter and my dog.
Okay. And one last, not to take too much of your time, but just I just have
fine.
one last question.
Yep.
What not to answer when a recruiter asks you, what are your weaknesses?
Oh, well, I mean, what not to answer. I mean, I guess nothing that would really make you seem like you're a bad person. No, but I guess if a recruiter is asking you about, tell me your weaknesses, I really think that's quite a dated question now. I think there's so many, creative ways to get to kind of similar answers without having to ask somebody what your 3 strengths and 3 weaknesses are. I think that's a quite unprepared question. I would always kind of frame it in a way, one that uh, focuses more on maybe how you're improving that weakness. I'm trying to think, a weakness for myself. For example, if I have awful time management skills, I probably wouldn't say that in a position where time management is really key. So I wouldn't probably focus on that. Maybe think about a few of weaknesses you want to use, just so you go prepared, and just make sure that they don't hinder your actual application. Um, but yeah, maybe it could be something like, I tend to, talk a lot, for example. So what I do instead is I make sure to prepare for my meeting in advance, and I use a summary tool to make sure that what I want to say is summarized. But sometimes, I can ramble. That's kind of, I guess, an okay thing to say. Just don't say I just talk a lot and end it there. It's probably not going to be ideal.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. That was very helpful.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, Rachel, I wanted to ask, what is that one quality that you really look for in a candidate that makes a candidate stand out among all candidates? What is that one thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I'm trying to think, do I have a one thing? I think it's kind of the full package in a sense.
Yep.
I don't think there is one thing. I think honesty and realness, maybe I could use that as one thing. It's very easy to tell when somebody's being dishonest or faking, or to just telling me what they think I want to hear. It's just not, it's very easy to read through. So I think honesty would be that one thing. You can connect way better with somebody who's being honest with you. And it will make everything else come together. But that's hard. That's a really hard question. Good one.
Thank you. So, audience, do you have any question? We are almost at the end of our session.
Yeah, I guess I have one. It's not really a question. I guess it would more be like a favor or a request.
Sure, go on.
But I'm wondering if I could take like a photo of those who
course.
feel comfortable sharing themselves on their camera. Also, that's something else, by the way. And I get it. Listen, you're all finishing a tough week at school. One thing that is really key, I think, for making yourself stand out too is, turn on your cameras if you can. I don't mind. I know, like I said, we're not all sitting here, maybe have done our hair. But that's turning on camera, connecting. That's how we connect. So I wonder if I can do this view. I think I can do like a gallery or
Yeah,
the
sure.
together mode scares me a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm not going to use that one.
We have actually thought of this. We'll take a group picture at the end.
Okay. I will then, maybe I'll, anyways, I can leave it to you, or I don't know how best to do this.
Let me
Large
figure out.
gallery. I don't know how. Yeah, and again, don't feel super pressured if you're not comfortable turning your camera on, but I do think it's just so nice to get like a nice like group photo. So I don't know if you want me to leave it to you to do that, or if this everybody who's gonna.
Yeah, I think lots of people have turned on their camera.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I did the large gallery view. Let me check. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's showing everybody who's on camera now. I did the same thing, so.
Yeah. Oh, we actually have Aurovindya till the end of our session. Thank you so much for being. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you. So do we want to go ahead and, I don't know, smile or something for the picture?
I really appreciate if other people can turn on their camera as well, so that we can get a good picture. Yes, Sina, go on.
No, nothing. Sorry, my bad.
Okay, wait. Just 1 minute.
Saraf, I think even though other people turn on their camera, they will go in slide 2, so they won't be seen on the main screen anyway. So the screen can handle only 8 to 10, maybe the 8 to 10 faces. So I think it's a good time to take a photo or maybe screenshot.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm on it. Okay. Thank you, Roshni. Everyone ready?
Oh, of course it did a stupid.
I'll take another one. So Roshni, are you here?
Yes.
Yeah. Would you like to talk something about with Rachel?
Oh yeah. I was letting Rachel speak. Hi Rachel, I'm Roshni. I'm the president of the club. I'm not turning on my camera because I basically don't look very well today. I'm not
Don't
been
worry.
feeling well.
It's nice to meet you though.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this session. It was really, really helpful and insightful. We were trying to have a interview session from so long, and just seeing it work out so well and all the students getting the help from you. We are very grateful for that, and I really appreciate you taking out your time on Friday evening and being here present today. So thank you so much.
No problem. Honestly, it's a pleasure. I know that a lot of your events do happen in person. Maybe we can do something in the future where we actually get to meet in person. But I really appreciate you guys accommodating me virtually. And it's been great. It's really nice. You guys all have some great questions too. I don't know the answers to everything. And just glad that you guys were able to hopefully take something away from today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Yeah, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I usually will share every posting I have. And if you want any advice or just want to grab coffee sometime, I'm in Ottawa, so happy to do so.
Of course, we'll do that. I'd request once again to turn on your camera, guys. I'll just take another picture. Sorry. Just a minute. Yeah. There you go.
Oh.
Ready? Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, send over the pictures. I'll send the ones that I have as well at the end, but I appreciate it.
Okay. So Rachel, would you like to say anything to our students who are looking forward to get co-ops in companies in summer, in fall?
Only, best of luck. Make sure that whatever resume you write, you have at least 5 other people review it, reviewed at different times of the day. It's so easy to have an error kind of fall through the cracks the entire way. Feel free to reach out to friends or family to practice your interview questions. That's the way you're going to do as best as you can, is by practice. But just best of luck. If you, like I said, if you keep an eye on our page, if ever you want to potentially apply to work for us, Aura's a great student. We're super excited and happy to have her, and I'm sure she'd be willing to ask or and answer any questions as well. But I really just appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming and for taking the time from your busy schedule and helping us with your insights. Thank you very much.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of the night. Best of luck too for the rest of your session.
You too. You too. Thank you very much. Bye, Rachel.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Great session, Saraf.
Thank you. Thank you, Roshni. Thanks a lot to Haripriya, Parvati, Sina for being here.
Yeah,
so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to Saraf. You made
Good
this
job,
happen.
guys. Great
Yeah.
Thank you,
session.
everyone. No worries.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So if I leave the session, it will be the recording will be posted in the link, right? In the chat?
Yeah, it will be posted in the chat.
Okay, I'm stopping the recording now.